Hi, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach parenting, family communication, and good relationship development all through the lens of self-government all over the world. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about teaching children practical intelligence skills. Practical intelligence is definitely one of the key factors to a successful person, and we all want our children to be successful, right? Well, in this video, I'm going to be talking about some of the different intelligences that we need to keep in mind and how we can develop practical intelligence in our children. So there definitely are different types of intelligence. There's no way I'm going to give you an exhaustive list right now, but I am going to talk about the three most prominently talked about types of intelligence, and that is intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence, and practical intelligence. So let's talk about intellectual intelligence. That is the most old-fashioned to talk about, but when I was a child, that's what everybody worried about, right? Oh, we're going to examine a person's IQ, and if we know their IQ, then we know how successful they will be. Well, that didn't necessarily pan out because some of the smartest, intellectually speaking, people in the world actually struggle with their social skills the most. And they have a really hard time innovating and getting past some of those hangups that come with all of that myopic viewing of data or whatever it happens to be. Now, I definitely value intellectual intelligence. I feel like that without intellectual intelligence, we would cripple our society. We need people who can think outside of boxes, who can see patterns, collect data, tell us the things that we need to know, absolutely. And they are key to the innovative process. However, they can innovate something and then that something can get stuck and never go anywhere because they don't have the practical intelligence. Now, a really great person is a person who has great intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence, and practical intelligence. Those people truly have an edge in the world to be able to accomplish all kinds of things. The good news is you can develop any of these types of intelligence, so you're not stuck with whatever you have to deal with. Many intelligences are actually groomed in the environment we live in. This is why parents historically have always done things such as music lessons and teaching their children to play chess or incorporating religious practices. These are all different angles to help children to develop their intelligences in a balanced way. So parents seem to sense these intelligences even though they haven't been really widely talked about until recently. The next type of intelligence that we need to discuss is emotional intelligence. This is probably the most popular intelligence right now that people talk about, and for good reason. We are having people who are struggling with their emotional intelligence, and it's not what they think though. We are missing the mark on emotional intelligence. I've done other videos about that, so I'm not going to spend tons of time in this video really talking about how we're missing the mark. I just want to tell you that the whole concept of emotional intelligence actually began with the idea that a person could understand how they work emotionally, how their thoughts, feelings, and emotions and behaviors actually work together so that they can have the greatest outcomes. But what we are doing to emotional intelligence is people are saying that if we just understand our feelings and if we can identify why we have our feelings, then we have the height of emotional intelligence. That's just one tiny piece and can sometimes trap a person if they don't actually understand how they can make changes so that they can improve their emotional outcomes. Anyway, that's emotional intelligence. And how do people succeed with emotional intelligence? Well, if you can understand where somebody else is coming from, that's going to improve your relationships, right? If you can also self-assess yourself and say, wait, this is what I do. This is a thought that I keep having. Is that thought actually true? Or could there be another thought that's also true or is true instead of that other one that I should be focusing on so that I can change my emotions? emotional outcomes. A person like that can end up becoming very emotionally strong, which means that they don't end up in bondage to their emotions. Instead, they end up using productive emotions instead of non-productive emotions on a regular basis. That's what it looks like when a person has great emotional intelligence. And I've got to tell you that that actually is a thing that I teach a lot about. So if you're interested about that, be sure to hit links to some of those other videos on this channel that are going to be talking about emotional intelligence. But let's talk about practical intelligence, because practical intelligence is actually one of the factors that determines some of our most successful people in society. So what is practical intelligence? Practical intelligence is the ability to communicate with, understand, self-motivate, drive action. There are a lot of things, and that's just a small list, because if you look at some of the real game changers in society, the people who start businesses, start movements, who gather lots of friends around them, usually have really great social skills, the ability to articulate their ideas to other people. Those people are the ones who have high amounts of practical intelligence. Those are the people who nothing seems to stop them. They have practical intelligence. They see the world practically. They say, this is happening, but guess what? This is where I'm going, so it doesn't matter. I'm going to move past it. They have high levels of motivation. How do you help a person to develop this? And what happens when a person develops this? Well, we have a really great example in Steve Jobs, actually. So Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, was actually a co-founder of Apple Macintosh. He had a partner. His partner was a super smart guy, had a lot of intellectual intelligence. Steve and his partner, both very smart people, put together the ideas behind Apple Macintosh. But it was Steve who possessed the practical intelligence, and so he went out and got the funding and moved the idea along. Now, over time, Apple Macintosh grew, it expanded, and it was because of the networking. It wasn't necessarily because of the programming anymore. If you can sell something to a person and really do it in a way where you care about them and you have conviction about your product, that is practical intelligence. So that's what Steve possessed. He was able to make friends, develop relationships, and move things along. So Apple grew. Well, over time, his friend, who was part of the buildup and he was part of the intellectual movement behind what he was doing, ended up getting voted off the board of Apple. That was amazing. They just thought, well, now a whole bunch of people know this, so he's not cutting edge anymore, I guess, because his intellectual intelligence phased out. And he didn't have, I guess, the practical intelligence to keep himself associated with the board. Maybe had he had a little bit more practical intelligence, maybe it would have worked. Who knows? I don't know all the details. I just know that Steve is really credited for that practical intelligence. Well, interestingly enough, over time, Steve got voted off the board of his own company because they thought maybe they didn't need him as it got big enough. And then we had the years where Apple Macintosh almost died. And that's because the person who was making relationships and who was talking to people and moving things in his way that was so intelligent practically was not there anymore doing it. And they couldn't replace him. So in the end, they invited him back on the board of the company, and he started working his practical intelligence magic again, and boom, Apple became what we know it is today in 2022. So, which is a very big company, right? This is the power of practical intelligence. So let's talk about key things that you can do to help develop maybe some of your own practical intelligence, but also to help your children develop practical intelligence too. Let's talk about some of the key things that you can teach your children so that they can develop practical intelligence. And I can promise you some of these things actually might surprise you. People who understand practical intelligence learn how to work with other people. One of the key ways that you can teach your children how to work with other people is to develop a family culture where everyone is working really well together. This means the family knows how to solve problems together. They know how to discuss things together. They know how to handle conflicts without having them have to go to big dramatic episodes together. This means that there's a foundational understanding of who each other is in the family. This means that we understand roles. So I teach self-government, and actually there's a book that I wrote years ago, back in 2009, after the BBC made a documentary of our family called The World's Strictest Parents. I wrote this book as a reply to that movie because I wanted people to have more and they were begging for it. So this best-selling book, Parenting a House United, teaches you how to set up an environment where the family can handle their problems together, can solve issues together, can get everybody on the same page in the relationships. Having good relationships in the family is literally the most important thing for developing practical intelligence. And that means everyone has to understand the identity of each person in the home. And when I say identity, I don't mean preferences, likes, or careers, or whatever, life paths. I'm talking about who a person truly is, self-evident truths in your home. When I wrote this book, I thought everyone understood their roles in the family. Roles such as that mother is actually a nurturer, which means she's the heart and hearthstone of the family. She's a teacher of the family. She does a whole lot more than just drive people places and stuff. And it doesn't matter if she goes to work or not. She's still the heart and hearthstone of the family. Making dinner and going to work, those are just responsibilities that a person takes on. That doesn't necessarily define their role in the families. And so also, what's the role of father? What's the role of 15-year-old son? What's the role of 7-year-old daughter? I thought people understood these, that they were pretty common sense just based upon how I was raised. But I guess that wasn't common sense. And so people started asking me questions. They would say things like, well, Nicholeen, I know you're saying to teach your children these skills, but what if your child doesn't care? What if they won't do anything that you tell them to do and they just walk away? And I would say, oh, okay, so you actually probably have a roles issue. If they are not respecting parental authority, then they are not respecting who you are in the family, which means you have dysfunction. If the child tries to take on role of parent, dysfunction. If the parent takes on role of child, dysfunction. The roles have to stay in the right place, otherwise dysfunction is the result. So I wrote this book called Roles: The Secret to Family, Business, and Social Success. This is a great book to read with your children because it's a story. You learn through the story of this family who has their roles not in the right place. And then you see them start putting into effect a lot of the things in this book, which you'll want. There's a whole course that I have that teaches all of these things and does training on these things. So definitely learn about those. I'm going to talk about a few of those things, though, that I do train and talk about in the course right now so that you can see even more things that your children need for practical intelligence success. When a person has practical intelligence, they don't just know who they are, but they also know how to communicate with other people. So in a home that is focusing on having self-mastery, self-government, and bonding together closely as a family, having good communication is vital. So part of family communication involves problem solving. So in the Teaching Self-Government training, I talk about teaching a problem solving exercise called SODAS. That's an acronym that stands for Situation, Options, Disadvantages, Advantages, Solution. This is a journal that a family can actually fill out as they're doing SODAS exercises together as a family, and helping to develop the prefrontal cortex, or the problem-solving muscle that we all have in their children, while also figuring out why we keep making the same mistakes that we've made. Now you see I've got a big bundle of books here, so let's talk about some of these other books. So these 3 books are each meeting journals. We have deliberate meetings as a family where we discuss things together and we discuss individually. So we have couples meetings, husband and wife, that sets the example to the children that mom and dad talk about things, problem solve things. They put their relationships first. Remember, a practical intelligence person, it's all about relationship. It's all about developing relationships if you have practical intelligence, okay? Then also, this journal here is where we record our family meetings. So we have weekly family meetings where the family gets together and discusses the announcements and things that are going on, topics of concern, action items that they want to take, and they run it in such a way that does not lead to conflict and helps everyone feel understood, but it's also very productive. And just think of the board meetings that you go to potentially, or church meetings with a council or something. Just think of what could be improved in your child's life if they know how to be part of a meeting. That is practical intelligence, okay? And so then the other meeting that we have in our family is we have mentor meetings. These are individual one-on-one meetings that we have with the children where we help them set goals and hold them accountable to those goals and those commitments that they make so that they learn follow through and they learn to self-motivate. Haha, practical intelligence. All of those things are required for a person to have truly great practical intelligence. So we have covered so many things related to practical intelligence, but there's more. There's more. In our regular daily interactions with our children, we actually have so many opportunities to teach a person how to master themselves. A person who is great at practical intelligence, they are able to analyze themselves, master themselves, and maintain high-level productivity. This means that they have to be able to give themselves instructions and follow through. This means they need a skill when they're growing up called following instructions. So when my children are young, and in fact all the way along, even when the teens came to my home as treatment foster children, I started with this skill. Maybe not this book for the teens, but this skill, which I teach in my course, which is following instructions. There are 5 steps to following an instruction. You look at the person, keep a calm face, voice, and body, say okay or ask to disagree appropriately, do the task immediately, and then check back. If I'm going to give myself an instruction, I'm going to follow the same process. Also, if I have a goal, that's an instruction. Okay? When I'm working with other people and I say that I'm going to do something for them, I'm going to show that I have good follow through. They can depend upon me, which is a practical intelligence skill. That means I have to follow instruction that they have given me. That's how I advance in the business world, is actually following instruction. That's how I maintain freedoms. So there are 3 other skills. They also have skill sets attached to them. I'm not going to talk about all the steps to those skills, but I do want to tell you what the skills are because they do relate to having good practical intelligence. So this book here, Porter Earns a Quarter, teaches the skill accepting no answers and accepting criticism. So 2 different skills, but it's all the same skill set. When a person has good practical intelligence, they know how to accept no answers and move on, to not take things personally and just self-motivate forward. They know that not everybody is going to agree with them all the time and not everything is going to go their way. That's why they must consistently work. By the way, work is another attribute, character attribute, that leads to great practical intelligence. So definitely work with your children and give them the opportunity to work as well. So another skill that a person needs for good practical intelligence is taught in this book, Big Win for Quinn, which is accepting consequences. Cause and effect is a real principle. There are consequences to every thought, behavior, and action that we take. A person with practical intelligence is aware of that. So that means that they decide ahead of time what type of actions and thoughts that they want to have. This is actually what it means to be self-governing, okay? And that's what I teach, right? All of this is self-government skills. So when a person can accept the consequences of their own behaviors and not blame somebody else, then they're on the road to being an honest person who will impress others, which develops more practical intelligence. Now this leads me to the final skill that I'm going to be teaching them that are part of the basic skills. There are many other skills that we can teach, but these are the 4 basic skills. This book, Page Takes the Stage, teaches the skill disagreeing appropriately. Now this is a very powerful practical intelligence skill. A person who has good practical intelligence, they are able to get their point across even if they don't agree with another person, and they are able to understand someone and care about them even if they don't agree with them. We live in a world right now that is filled with the myth that we have to agree or we can't be friends. That is a myth. It's immature. It's bad civic engagement. and it is poor practical intelligence. Our children need the skills for success that will help them see other people's point of view, value those point of view, but also take a stand for what they know is right at the same time. That is practical intelligence in politics and ideological warfare. If you've enjoyed everything that I've shared in this video about practical intelligence, I know that you are going to love my Calm Parenting Toolkit, which is a great starter course for your self-government journey. Calmness is key to all the communication, all the relationship building. Calmness is the mark of a truly great and intelligent person. So if you can work on your calmness and help your children master their calmness too, that will prepare the way for them to experience more practical intelligence in all of the areas of their life. In the description below this video, there is a link. It's one of the top links. It says teachselfgov.com/toolkit. If you click on that link now, it will take you to the Calm Parenting Toolkit and you can have it for free. Click on the link to the toolkit now. I'll see you there.